Good day, everyone. Welcome to this webinar organized by UXPA International. My name is EJ Makala, and I will be your host. Today's program will be a useful one for those folks who are early in their UX journey. We are joined by Christopher Bell. Christopher is a UX designer based in Atlanta, Georgia, in the US. Christopher has practiced UX professionally since 2021, and they were a professional visual designer prior to that. They have taught Figma part-time on the Coursera educational platform as well. Currently, Christopher works on small-scale projects for startups and small businesses through their consultancy, the Inspire Agency. Just a quick word about the UXPA. The User Experience Professionals Association strives to bring high quality content that is that's relevant to the UX community, including the one today. Towards the end of this session, which is expected to last for about an hour, I will provide information about how you can submit ideas for future topics. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube in the coming days. Also, Christopher has told me that in answer to one of the most popular questions that we get is that he will make a copy of the slide deck that he'll be using available to folks. How we do that exactly at this point, I'm not quite sure. I presume we'll have a link available on the UXPA website and possibly also one on the YouTube recording. With that, let me pass things over to Christopher Bell. Welcome, Christopher.
Hey everyone, thank you. Thank you, EJ. Like I said, I'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation. So welcome to Strategy for Aspiring Designers to Gain Experience with Startups. After months of learning UX design and creating portfolios and perfecting your resume, you're at the hardest part of your journey, getting a UX job. And the problem is you have no work experience. But you need work to get experience. It's a never-ending cycle. And you wonder how to get out of it. So hopefully today, this webinar will help you show you some of the things I did to land a UX job. A little bit more about myself. I was a professional photographer for about 15 years. I specialized in fashion, beauty, body paint. I also worked in the music industry doing media. I even had my own print magazine for about 5 years. I worked out of my own studio and supplemented my income driving Lyft and Uber on the side. But in 2020, all that was changed. Right when COVID hit, I became a father and lost my business in the same month. So it was a crazy time. With a new family to provide for, I had to clock into retail to make ends meet, but I knew I didn't want to be there forever. So that's where my UX journey started. Most people think the UX journey is easy. They think it's simple. It's easy to say that I taught myself on YouTube and went to a quick UX bootcamp, and voila, I landed a role with a Fortune 100 company. But let's be honest, if it was that easy, everyone would be doing it. But my journey looked more like this. I did learn through YouTube and other sources. I built a portfolio, I applied for jobs and failed, invested in UX bootcamp, rebuilt my portfolio again, applied for jobs again, and failed again, and the cycle continued. But notice I did free work with startups, applied for jobs while I was in boot camp. I didn't wait till I was finished. I kept going. So I feel where you're coming from, but after all that, I did land a role with a Fortune 100 company. Before we get into the meat of it, I want you to know that breaking into UX was one of the hardest things I ever done, but it was also the most rewarding. If you really want this, just don't give up. I remember my coworkers in retail used to look at me crazy, always listening to UX videos, podcasts when I was on the clock. You know how it is, people doubt you. But when I received my first job offer, it was a full-time contract role, and my offer was more than what my manager was making, and even better, I was able to work remotely at home. One of my keys to success, happiness is overrated. And I know that sounds wild, but hear me out. Every person you know that left an impact on this world, regardless if they were good or evil, they did it because they were unhappy. And I'm not saying don't have peace in your life. I'm saying that happiness can lead to being complacent. For real change in your life, you have to be uncomfortable and you have to be pissed off enough to want real change. That's how bad you gotta want it. And that's probably why you're here today. All right, so let's get into it. Why startups? This is a great way to gain direct experience in UX. Opportunity to work on real projects with real users, wear multiple hats, which I get into that later. Get exposed to different industries and challenges, and it's an opportunity to influence design decisions early. UX boot camps and online courses are cool, but I'm telling you from experience in the real world, it's completely different. You have to approach each problem differently. So you do need that experience to become a better designer. I remember attending this tech conference in Florida some years ago. I ran into a recruiter from Microsoft, a company that I would love to work for. And she was very honest with me. She told me that she would never push a candidate from a UX boot camp. And she can't put her name on it. And I'm sure many other recruiters feel the same way. So you have to be competitive and find that experience. Here are some of the challenges to expect working with a startup. Limited resources compared to enterprise. Multiple hats. That means you're not just doing research and design. Sometimes it can mean writing copy, doing online marketing campaigns, creating a slide deck for investors. It could be anything to solve their problems. Navigating undefined requirements. Oftentimes, startups don't even know what they're doing. They try to figure it out as they go because half the time, founders don't even know what they need. And oftentimes, you have to figure it out. On the corporate side of things, it's more structured. You have the ability to learn from senior designers. Usually have one defined job, usually more stable. But in this economy, just being honest with you, that nothing is safe. Back in 2023, my company, which made billions in profit, still had 4 rounds of layoffs. It was a scary time. And this last week, we had another round of layoffs. So gone are the days of finishing college, getting a job, and staying there for 20 years, and then retiring. The world has changed. The one thing you learn about being in UX, you have to learn how to pivot. "90% of startups fail, and more than likely, you'll be working with one that will fail, and that's okay. Because the purpose of working with a startup is to gain experience, and you will. And you will often realize while working with them, you'll be a bearer of bad news, because they think whatever idea or vision they have is $1 million idea. But your research may say something different, and they need to pivot. And that's hard for a lot of founders to take that in. And that's another reason why startups fail. Their mind is so set on their idea, they can't see anything else. A lot of times, these founders will lack experience in completing projects. If you ever worked on a project before, you know the vision that you had in the beginning will look completely different in the end. And that's how it should be. If your ideas doesn't mature or evolve, the project won't be successful. Failure still makes a good case study, and here's why. Because it's realistic. Not every story ends with a happy ending. Products fail all the time, and hiring managers know that. So if your case study ends bad, just make sure you explain why it failed. And oftentimes, it's a lack of investment in UX, lack of money in marketing, a stubborn founder that didn't want to pivot, founder taking shortcuts that rushed the product out. It's a ton of reasons why it fails. And you have to explain what you would have done to prevent it if given opportunity. How to find opportunities with startups. Most people already know of the startup job boards, and honestly, I didn't have any luck with them because most of them are established and they need a senior designer on their team. For you all, it's best to aim for fresh new startups. And new startups literally pop up every single day. So for me, most of my opportunities came through networking. Startup accelerators, pitching events, and of course, like networking online can be effective, but I think it's the most effective is in person. And here's why. You have to understand that, you have to understand that most of these founders are dreamers. They had this incredible idea and they believe they can change the world and one day help them leave their day job and become very, very rich. So because of that, they are very protective of it. And I get it, I understand. It's like you winning a lottery ticket, and some stranger actually can't see it. Hell no, you can't see my ticket. You ain't try to snatch it and run off. So I get it. They all heard the story of Facebook, and they don't want anybody to steal their winning concept. So you have to understand that it's easier to connect with them in person, then you're no longer some cold stranger online. It makes them feel more comfortable with you. And if you're not an extrovert, that can be challenging. But that's okay because I had the same issue. And the more I did it, it got easier and easier. Their approach, got to get out of your comfort zone. You attending live tech events. If you can, bring a friend to encourage you. If you can't, tell yourself I'm going to meet at least 2 or 3 new people tonight, and do not leave until you do so at these events. Just simply introduce yourself. Like, hey, my name is Chris. I'm a UX designer. What about you? It's that simple. Don't be intimidated. Don't let a lack of social skills keep you from your dream job. Because if they're a startup founder, ask them about their startup. Trust me, they love talking about it. It's fresh. It's new. They're spreading the gospel of their new great idea. So then you tell them how cool it is. And then explain what you do. Most founders, when they think of a UX designer, they're thinking of graphic design, a Figma master, or this is the person who can build my app. But no, you briefly educate them about what you do. As a UX designer, you're much more than that. You're a problem solver. And every startup, and I mean every startup, has problems that need to be solved. So you can ask them, what are some of your pain points? A lot of them will be quick to tell you what they need app design. If they do that, first thing you ask, did you do any UX research? Now, some of them may be slick. They say they did some market research. That's not the same thing. No, you say you want to know about UX research. Did they validate their idea? And in most cases, they did not. But that's when you slide in there and you tell them, you're a new designer. You're willing to offer free assistance to offer a UX audit if they already have a product or a website. Accessing information, usually LinkedIn. And if you do use LinkedIn, just make sure you actually hit the connect button and not follow, so you can actually send a message to them. And schedule a follow-up meeting if they're interested. In most cases, founders think they need design, but in actuality, they need research. Because we live in a generation where people want to wake up and become rich overnight. They have an idea and they want to go straight to development, and you begin to see why startups have a 90% failure rate. Next steps. Definitely take notes on this. Follow up and schedule a free consultation. There are many ways to do this, but the easiest way is to follow up with the founder you met on LinkedIn. I personally like sending the message the very next day, just saying, hey, it was a pleasure meeting you last night and learning about your startup. And if they were interested in your free UX services, ask them when it's a good time to do a video call. It's that simple. Now, here's the part that can go crazy if you don't check it early. It can be problems. During the consultation, make sure you ask them about their pain points and set the scope. When I say set the scope, that means set limitations on what you're willing to do for free. We live in a time where people will use you and work you to death for free if you let them. So make sure you set the scope and pick which problems you want to solve for them, and ask them if they have any budget for research. There was this one startup I worked with. My UX research was free, but I still charged them $500 because to get the survey results I needed, because time is money, I didn't have time to walk the streets with a clipboard all day asking people to take a survey. So instead, I use a third-party service where I can get survey results much faster and much better than the streets, but it costs money to use it. But what if they don't have a budget? I also had a client that didn't have a budget, but he already had users using his app, and so he was able to personally provide me with users so I can do my job. Or it could be a situation where you just give them questions that need to be answered. But every situation is different, and you just have to fill it out. Make sure you set an end date. Honestly, it shouldn't be no more than a month. If possible, just 2 weeks. Just get some experience for your case study and move on. Lastly, deliverables. What are you offering and what are they expecting? For most of them, it could be a simple research report of your findings, maybe a low fidelity mock-up of the MVP, but whatever it is, just make sure it's clear and in writing so there's no confusion with anyone. Hard lessons I learned. Not setting limitations on scope of work. So that's why I'm telling you to set the scope, because I didn't do that in the beginning. In my day job, we call it scope creep, when you're supposed to solve one problem, now they're expecting you to solve 5 of them. I've been through it, so don't let it happen to you. So again, set a time limit, get it on paper or email. Please do not do it in the DMs. That's too personal and they won't take it seriously. Email is much easier to find when you need it as well. This last one is important. Do not sign NDAs, especially not for some free work. In your work agreement, make it clear you planning to use this as a case study for your portfolio. It doesn't benefit you if they don't allow you to do that. When you refuse to sign it, and they're going to ask you why, and you tell them, no, there's only a free opportunity to help you, and tell them you're willing to meet them halfway. Tell them you don't need to see anything that you wouldn't show the investor, because every successful startup has to raise funds from investors, and I'm telling you, investors are not signing NDAs. I had clients trying to bully me into signing just for a free consultation. Nope, not doing it, because startups are a dime a dozen, and after a while, ideas begin to overlap, and you don't want to miss a paid opportunity because of an NDA on some free work. Because both of them may be using AI, for example, like a similar AI tool. So no, don't sign unless they're really paying you. In most cases, they can't even afford to sue if they want it. But anyway, just like stand your ground and protect yourself. Build your case study as you go. Do not, and I repeat, do not wait until the project is over to build your case study. It's hard to remember everything you did, so document everything as you go. Now, there are many ways to do this. You can keep a notebook, a Word document. For me, I like using Microsoft OneNote. Some people use Notion, but whatever you choose, document everything as you go. It'll make things much easier when you're building your portfolio. When you're building your case study, you're not just sharing everything you did, you're telling a story. And it's important to have all those details to create that compelling story that will help you land a job. The role of UX is essential to the success of any product. I'm going to say it again. The role of UX is essential to the success of any product. I cannot think of one product that is successful with horrible UX. You can make the most beautiful product in the world, and it doesn't mean anything with a horrible user experience. Another thing to keep in mind, UX should be present in all phases of a product. When a founder gives birth to an idea, UX needs to be there. Why? Because you need to be there to validate it. You need to be there to do the research, to prove that it's something that people want and people will pay for it. Most startups need investors. So guess what the first two questions they're going to ask? Why do people want it? And how much money can they make from it? Because investors just don't give away money for the sake of giving it away. So they need a UX designer to answer those questions. So it's amazing to me when you find founders that want a shortcut and skip the UX. When it's the UX, they're going to help them bring the money they're looking for. So that's the one. So when it's time to develop the product, guess what they need to design it? The UX designer. We the ones got to make it easy to use and make sure it's delightful for users to use it. And then after the product is done, you got to test it. Do some usability tests, maybe some refinements. Guess who they need it for? UX designers. So because when you launch a product, you only get one first impression, and a startup got to make sure it's damn good, because if it's not, it's rare that users come back for a second chance. So I want you as designers to get into that mindset. When you see a product fail and you look into why it failed, it's probably because of bad UX or the lack of it. When a product is successful, it's probably had a good UX. For example, look at Chick-fil-A. It has the most effective drive-through in the country. Or Amazon, how they make it so easy for users to buy stuff. I'm saying all this because don't let anyone devalue your worth as a designer. Companies and startups try all the time to shortcut UX, and every time they're going to pay for it. So bringing it back to these startups, they're either going to pay up front and have a successful product, or they're going to pay on the back end when they fail. Either way, they're going to pay. So when you talk to these founders, see how much they value true UX. If they don't waste your time on them. Find a startup, they'll appreciate your help, and you're going to feel so good after you help them out, even if it's a small research study, because you made a positive impact on them, and they won't forget it. How to find tech events. For me, I use meetup.com, eventbrite.com, and LinkedIn. And as you go to these events and as you network and meet new people, at least two, three people per event, and then they let you know about other events, and then they let you know about more events. So like after a while, you plug into what's going on within your city. So, but that's sources I use to get started. The types of UX services to offer. When you meet these startups, they could be anywhere. They could be freshly new and haven't got started, or they could be in the middle of middle of launching a product, or they could already launch a product. So it really all depends. But a lot of cases, they probably need UX research. That's one thing you can offer as a service. Surveys or interviews to get data. Like I say, if they only had the money to pay for like a third party to get a survey, maybe you can do some interviews and collect some data for them. Um, if they don't have a budget, provide questions to be considered, because oftentimes they're having a great idea and they just want to, they just want to launch the product, but there's a bunch of questions they need to think about, and usually that's when you come in. You can help them think of those questions. It been many times I come across a startup, and they tell me what their product is, or their idea, and I just throw like 5, 10 questions at them, and they don't have an answer. And they need that because they need to go back and think about these answers, like think about the questions to get answers for them. Because I'm only asking the same question the investor is going to ask before they give up their money. I'm asking the questions that will help them have a better product. You know, so that's nothing you can offer. UX audit of a website or product, and usability tests. I even had a client where, like I said, they already had an app already launched, and they gave me access to some of the users to do usability tests. And what I did was, I did over Zoom, where I screen recorded, so so I can show the client, how they looked and how they're going across the site, and they can hear the actual interviews and see the usability test. And another reason to do it, because you tell the users to think out loud when they're using a product, and they don't do that all the time. But you as a designer had to be able to read their faces, or read when they're hesitant about doing anything or clicking anything. So these are some of the things you can offer to be a case study. And be sure to make screenshots of before and after. That help you build your case study. So, and explain your design decisions. Because if you're just designing something pretty, you know different from a graphic designer. Everything had to make sense, right? So, so you change something and you design something differently, explain why you did it. Because when you present your case study to a hiring manager, they're going to ask you, like, why do you do this? Why did you choose this color? Why you put this button right here? So be able to explain your design decisions. And to wrap things up, present your deliverables. So this is a good way to wrap up with your client. So like I say, usually it may be like a UX research type project. So after doing your research, you schedule a presentation for them, and they give them a high level 15, 20-minute presentation. You're not giving them every single detail of what you found. You give them a high level understanding of what you did. And after that presentation, you can email them an appendix or email them all the details that you gathered. So for example, I had a client that had a financial literacy product that you're trying to launch. So I give him a 15, 20-minute presentation of the survey data I got for him. But after that presentation, I sent him like a 30-page report broken down by income level, race, location, there's all the details they may need from that survey, all the quantitative data they need. So you had to get them all that during that presentation. You just let them know. But it's also good for you, preparing you for your full-time UX role, because all the times you're given a UX assignment, you're gonna have to present your information, and you have to defend your design in front of your peers and maybe to that product owner. So you learn from everything, and all this will help you when you're trying to land your role with UX. So I kept the presentation shorter, so I had time for questions. But definitely feel free to link with me here on LinkedIn. And I also host a free workshop every month where we take creative topics, and uh, I didn't want to create a workshop where so many workshops about trying to teach you Figma and mastering Figma. For me, I host workshops to teach you how to think, how to see things, how to solve problems. So already this year we did a workshop about redesigning the music experience. We did one earlier this month about we redefined the dating app experience. It was really fun. And the one for next month, coming up in a few weeks, we're going to redesign the travel app experience. So if you're interested in doing something like that, it's fun, it's collaborative. You use FigJam. Just go to my website, inspire-ux.com, and register for free. But yeah, any questions? EJ, you want to moderate the Q&A?
Absolutely, Christopher. Thank you for that presentation. I'd be happy to moderate the Q&A. And just for those of you who do have some questions, please use the Q&A button in Zoom and post your questions there, and we will work to answer it. Christopher, the first question is from Josephine, and Josephine asks, how much free assistance is too much?
Honestly, I like to keep things at 2 weeks because yeah, like people kind of abuse it or take advantage of it. And now I had instances where I had a client where I did some free UX work for my portfolio, and they actually came back and hired me to do more work. So that works out. So you don't want to leave money on the table by giving too much for free. But like I said, every startup had many problems. So focus on trying to solve one problem. That keep you from like overworking yourself, you know, because I understand most of you trying to learn UX probably still in school or have full-time jobs or have families. So you want to get yourself caught up trying to do free work for somebody else until it drains you. So yeah, keep a balance there. So try to find something you can solve within 2 weeks is my personal opinion.
Great, great. And I see some questions rolling in. Thank you for those of you who are posting them. We'll see if we can get to them all here. Let's see. Kaylin asks if you have any particular book recommendations for user experience.
Yes, actually, yeah, I got one right here. I'm rereading right now. It's called Articulating Design Decisions. You see that on a lot of people's lists, and it's really that good. I got this book when I was learning UX, but I just started rereading it a couple weeks ago. And here's why. Because on my day job, I had to do a feature. I had to solve a problem, and then you learn in corporate. You solve a problem. You had this thing called a peer review, where you go in front of your coworkers, other peers, and you present the problem and you show them your solution. And your peers are there to make sure you had the best solution. And so I had a situation where I had a great solution, and so I'm fighting off questions. I don't you feel like gladiator. You know, you're in the middle of the coliseum, and everybody's shooting questions at you, and you're trying to defend your design. And I lost, right? And it shouldn't be like a win lose situation because everybody on the same team and you all want the best solution. But in my mind, I want to win. You know, I went in thinking that I had the best solution, and I still believe I did, but I didn't defend it well enough. You know what I mean? And that would make me go back and read that book because the book even tell you you can have the best design solution, but if you don't defend it well and convince other people to see what you see, it's not gonna go through. And then and then you find yourself in a situation where are you willing to down the hill for this design or not? Because it is corporate. I mean, it's something. If I really feel like it really is a game changer, I'll fight it a little bit more. But if not, I lick my wounds. I take the solution they voted on and move forward. I mean, that's how it is in real life. But yeah, I
Yeah.
say check that out.
Okay. Great. You did more than recommend a book there. You went down the reasoning behind it, and so that's great. That could be its own talk. Penelope asks, what are some methods for developing good questions?
That was a good one. Yeah, because like you say, every situation is different. I'll always open up to like with a client, what's going well for them and what's going bad for them. And they're always going to have something bad because if they didn't, you wouldn't be having a meeting. So there's always something there. So ask them what's some of your pain points, and then you kind of fill it out from there. So you don't ask them any yes or no questions. You ask them an open-ended question to get them talking about it, or ask them questions about their startup, like, well, tell me about your product. Explain to me what it does. And as they're explaining it to you, you see it in your head, and questions will start coming up to you. So just get them talking, and it comes to you. Now it's not an instant thing. Like it's something that comes with time. But the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Hmm. Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you're even saying maybe just start with some basic questions, maybe the same questions you might even ask for like multiple people in different scenarios, and that will perhaps naturally generate questions
Yes, it feel
on the
more
fly.
organic. Yeah, it don't feel like an interview or interrogation. Just It's a natural organic flow of things. Exactly.
Interesting. Okay. Um, so Chelsea and probably others want to know, what did you do to make money while you were working with startups for free?
Now my particular case, I said a retail job. You know what I mean? So I work retail. You know, remember I had a newborn baby at home, helping out with that. And so I didn't sleep. So my day started at 4 a.m. and oftentimes they into midnight. Not saying that it's gonna be that stressful for you, but usually most times you working with a new startup, they probably still have a day job themselves. So more likely you working with them in the evening time, probably no more than a couple of hours. I'm the type of person is everybody works differently. So I'm a type of person where I talk to the startup, try and see what the problem is, and I work on my own time alone, and then I come back and follow up with them when I see fit. Because sometimes my quiet time on that comes to late at night. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, you know, I take some notes, work on it later. But yeah, but even now, like I say, you know, I have my own consultancy now with the spy agency, and I still have a full-time day job, and I'm still doing workshops. You know what I mean? So I'm still doing multiple things. I live a very productive life with a family, and I have two children now. So and I make time for Fortnite to relax sometimes. You know what I mean? So, so yeah, time management is essential, and I think if you need help with that now, fix it now. I have three different calendars on Google. They color coded. Good time management make everything's easier. I promise you.
Right. Well, let me even kind of just ask another question related to that. Is I'm curious, what can you tell me a little bit about your? It seems that you have some personal drive here. That's happening too. Like why? What motivates you down this path of doing user experience work when it clearly seems to be such a challenge? I mean, why? You know, what, like even I'm even curious, why did you decide to pivot and switch into UX when you clearly already had a talent and experience and established yourself as a visual designer?
Yeah, even yeah, like to your point, even before UX, I'll do photography, I'll do video, I'll do multimedia type stuff. But no matter what I'm doing, I genuinely like helping people. I mean, and I feel like UX can help anyone. Like I said, you're a problem solver. You're not just somebody who makes a pretty design. And you know, now and like my day job is cool. Like I like my day job. You know, just in case they're listening in. You know what I mean? But let's be honest, you work for a huge company, and I'm solving a problem, and I turn it into development. I may or may not see my product go live. And if it does go live, I may not see the impact of it because I've already moved on to another project. But if I'm working with a small business who has a dream, they're working a day job and they really want to try to kick things off, but they don't know what to do, and you helping them out, you see immediate impact in their life, and they'll never forget about that. You know, I've been to events where I met people that know me from photographer for 10 years prior, still remember some things I've done for them that I forgot I did. You know what I mean? So I generally love UX. I think UX is life. I see it in everything I do. And that's why I do these workshops as well, because I don't want y'all to have the mindset that UX means it's fixing the app or a website. It's everywhere. It's the door handle. You go through a door. Do you push or pull? It's the experience doing going through a drive-through and you ordering food. It's in everything that you do. And so I love it. And then also by helping other people, it makes you a better designer much faster as well compared to like just working a day job. Because yeah, I got my role. Once I got my job, I could easily just stop, work 9 to 5, and be done. But I want to be the best designer possible. And the only way I can be a better designer is by staying active, keep solving random problems, you know, and actually helping my day job because you may have some other designers, that's all they do is 9 to 5. And you were corporate for so long, they only see certain things a certain way. But for me, I always have a different perspective because, oh yeah, I just worked with this client the other day. You know, I see things come, I'm constantly solving problems in different ways, and it really helped me out with my thought process.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds to me like when things get tough, when you're exhausted, when you get wounds that need to be licked, that it's that's that kind of love or passion inside you for the user experience is what keeps you going.
Yeah,
Is that
absolutely. Like, of
right?
course, you know, we all want to go to UX. We want to break into tech. You know, we want to make a bigger bag. We want to make more money. But to me, that's not enough. Like a lot of people want to make more money. That's normal. But we're gonna help you stick it out when it gets tough. Especially now, we have a very tough job market right now. It's very discouraging. You know, I got rejected from so many interviews, but I was so uncomfortable. I was so unhappy, like, that like, yo, by any means necessary, I'm going to be a UX designer by any means. You know what I mean? So, and it's such a blessing for me. My first role ended up being a huge company, like for my first role. You know what I mean? But I kept developing my soft skills, kept developing my talent, and keep learning and growing. Led me to the role. And mind you, my day job is in healthcare. I'm healthcare ignorant, right? And I had no healthcare experience when I got this job. So when I got the interview with them and they asked me to show a case study, I showed them a case study of me helping a small fashion designer. You know what I mean? But it's the way but of course it had nothing to do with healthcare, but it showed how I thought about things. It showed how I helped people. It showed how I solved a problem and showed them the way I think. And that helped me land that position.
That's
You got to
excellent.
think about
Okay.
any job. Every job you get, they're going to train you. You know what I mean? It's like, I know sometimes the job descriptions get kind of intimidating. Like, hey, we're looking for a junior designer, but you gotta have 10 years experience and you gotta be a master at Figma. You know what I mean? And
Uh-huh.
they go try to scare you with that. But
Yeah,
remember, every job you had, even if it's retail, fast food,
absolutely.
these jobs don't take a genius to do it, but they're going to train you. You know what I mean? So same thing we hear. They just need to know you know how to think and process things through. They need to know you're easier to work with, that you can work in a team environment, and you figure out the rest.
Yeah. Yeah. Questions keep rolling in here. Christine, first of all, thanks you for your helpful, concise, and straight to the point presentation. Um, and they want to know, how does one avoid going too deep into a problem, fighting the urge to redefine the target customers, operations, website, and all?
Mm. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, I should mention that in the presentation. That's a good question. When you're solving that problem, you're probably going to discover other problems. So what I like to do in my slide deck when I do the presentation, my deliverable, always end off with next steps. You know what I mean? So next steps, so kind of like letting the founder know what they should be focused on next. Also, opportunity like for them to hire you in the future, for something else that need to be done. So they know that your one presentation is not the end all be all. Like it's always something to do. So yeah, just make a note of it and mention it in the slide deck at the end. Like, hey, I did solve this problem, but this could be a potential another problem you need to look into.
Great, thank you. Um, uh, Narmeen asks a question about NDAs. So if a startup insists that you sign an NDA, how can one negotiate terms that will allow you to showcase the work in your portfolio while still respecting their confidentiality concerns? And and I want to tag on to that a little bit and ask, um, does your advice to avoid signing NDAs change if the startup is okay with, say, putting your work behind, putting your portfolio work or your case study behind a password or protection, or somehow even anonymizing it, so removing, like, kind of making sure that certain things are hidden?
I guess the first thing I tell you, make sure it's a negotiation and not a demand from them. You know what I mean? So let them know it's a conversation. Like, because it was at one point in the very beginning where one startup, he wanted me to sign an NDA, and of course I was refusing, but they made some changes for me, make amendments to that contract. So like, okay, yeah, I am showcasing this, but I'll also make sure they put in there like, hey, it's okay for me to use it for my case study because at the end of the day, you're doing free work so you can land a full-time paying role. I mean, so yeah, so it's give and take. It should be beneficial for both of you and not just for them. And they need to understand that. So but yeah, try to meet them halfway. Like, see, they can change some wording if they just really insist on signing something. And then but I also try to tell them like, hey, I don't need your deepest, darkest secret. I don't need the recipe to your Coca-Cola to work for you. Because usually, like UX designer, I can get away with this information that you would share with investors. Because, like, say, because I did a startup competition within my first year of UX, and I was in startup mobile competition, and I had to build a product in 3 days, and I met with investors, like $1 million investors, like throughout those 3 days. Like I met like 7 of them, and one of them pulled me to the side and he told me like, "Hey, people know I got money, so people pitch me ideas all the time, and if you don't have my attention in the first 30 seconds, I'm gonna forget about you." And he let me know like he don't sign NDAs because people pitch so many different ideas, I lose track. I don't put myself in a certain position, which is smart. You know what I mean? And they want my money, they're not gonna make me sign it anyway. So like, yay. And you gotta think about it too, like you have a startup, they pitching all the time to get money. So like, yo, don't tell me anything you wouldn't tell the investor. I'm fine with that. I don't need any working. So like, cause usually they wouldn't sign an NDA, they feel like they have to share everything. I don't need to know everything. I don't need to know everything. So you make that clear to them, it should make them feel more comfortable. Now, some people may still try to bully you. I had this happen to me recently. He does not let up. I simply wipe my hands of it. I'm just be honest with you because, like I say, it's new startups that pop up every single day, and if they give you a hard time now, and this is one thing I had to learn the hard way from doing business in general. If somebody give you a hard time from the very beginning, they're probably not gonna be a good person to be working with anyway. So save yourself the headache. I mean, and then find someone else because all the times it's not gonna be worth it.
Right. That seems like a good piece of advice is kind of choose who you work with. And sometimes that means saying no to potential opportunities to save yourself that pain. Um, okay. Nancy says, I am starting a UX career from zero. What should I do?
I think a lot of us started from zero in a sense. One of the things, I did go to a US boot camp, and the boot camp I went to, they gave me a career coach, and I was failing my interviews or not getting interviews, and I kept tweaking on my resume, like I just kept UXing the job interview process, right? And so I had a meeting with him, and he looked at my resume, and he noticed that only thing I had on there was my case studies that I did with startups. I totally erased my past, because I just thought like, well, they don't need to know I'm a photographer or anything like that. He was telling me, lean into it, lean into your past because it was your past that led to designing you are today. And I'm like, man, that's good advice. So now I don't hide the fact I was a photographer because I learned so many skills in UX as my time as a photographer. I didn't just take pictures. I organized models. I organized venues, stylists, makeup artists, working together, collaboration, meeting, time management, project planning. All the things I'm doing now as UX designer, I did back then. So I'm pretty sure, even though you start from zero, you're really not starting from zero. Find out what your paths are and find out the skills that you do have, and then lean into it to lean to your UX experience.
Yeah, that's seems really good too. And it is a little counterintuitive, but likewise, I think that if when you look, we haven't really talked much about the details of a good case study, but I have heard from a number of good sources that a good case study should really talk about the process of like how you got to where you ended up. And that may mean a lot of bumps in the road or unexpected turns. That in itself is a journey, and people like hiring managers, people who are potential coworkers, they are interested in that journey part, and
They
they are
really,
interested in like how did you navigate those curves, how did you handle those bumps in the road, and that your previous history is part of your story, and that tells you something about what kind of who you are as a person and how you got here. And so I think there's some wisdom in your answer
you
there.
know what, the bounce off that, EJ, you make a good point too, and that's something that's the designer need to keep in mind when you go into these interviews. They interview multiple people, and like most people, they don't want to be bored. They want to be somewhat entertained. So you don't want to have a boring case study. And one thing I had to learn was, even though I was great at solving problems, I had to learn a whole nother skill of telling the story of how I solved the problem, make it to an interesting story that they want to get engaged into. You know what I mean? Because they bored of it and they interviewing like 15, 20 people. Like you see it on LinkedIn when you apply for a job, they tell you, oh, thousands of people signed up for this job. You know what I mean? So this is what you're going up against. So you tell an interesting, compelling story of how you solved that problem. And like I said in the presentation, it may even have a bad ending to it. but just the fact that the journey of it is so real and is engaging, they like that. You want them to remember you after a long day of interviewing people.
Yes, yes, that's my gut feeling too. I'm going to agree with you there personally. I'm not sure if there are people who have other perspectives in this industry, but that's my sense too. Okay, Jamelia, uh, how has your experience been? Let's see. And you don't need to. Let me just kind of preface this that you don't need to go into detail about the company. They asked a question about Centene. Um, how's your experience been at Centene, and do you have any insights about your role there and advice for someone looking to transition into healthcare UX?
I can honestly say it's been a great experience at my job. I just had a one-on-one meeting with my manager this morning, and he's been awesome. I've been like I heard horror stories like from other fellow designers of the workplace, but I can honestly say the managers I had about two, three managers now, and they all been great. They all been totally different, but they all been awesome. And I say the best thing I'm getting from this job is learning so much because like you have people that have been working there for like 10, 15 years. You know what I mean? Like that's 15 years of design experience. So like yeah, I feel like I'm a damn good designer, but man, someone who's 15 years in, that's another level. They OP, you know what I mean? Like and they so cool people. Like I hit them up with a one-on-one on their calendar for 30 minutes of their time and just talk to them, ask questions and because I'm still learning, growing. I'm still a student in this thing, But I will tell you, when I first got hired, I was scared. Like you talk about imposter syndrome, it's just intimidating because I don't know anything about healthcare, and I'm hearing all these healthcare terms that I never heard of, like and but everybody's cool because they understand that it's gonna be overwhelming at first. They don't expect you to get it overnight. Like it's gonna take a few months to get it, and you got to remind yourself that you know uh, they hired you for a reason. So don't feel like it's like check off that imposter syndrome that you're not good enough. You are good enough. You just have to learn to get the swing of things. So it was heavy on me mentally when I first started, and I had to stay focused on that. And don't be scared to ask questions. 'Cause I used to feel like, man, if I ask questions, they're like, oh man, he don't need to be here. He don't know nothing. You know what I mean? Like, no, don't think like that. Like there's a problem if you're not asking questions. You know what I mean? Like ask questions and ask clearly, like, what this symbol mean? What PCP mean? What this provider thing mean? Like, it's okay,
Mhm,
because they
mhm.
want you to understand it so you can do your job.
Yeah,
So they kind of keep that in mind. Like you made it. When you make it, you made it. You know what I mean? Like they settle it in. Like it's okay. Don't think you'll
yeah,
get fired tomorrow.
yeah. But yeah, take in the good.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
all right. Um, and I think Jamila is also asking, is there with healthcare UX in particular, can you provide like one quick piece of advice of how to transition into that?
Um, One is ask questions for sure, and the other is communication because as a UX designer, you more likely might be in a squad format where you're the only designer, and then there's a product owner and a dev lead who's supposed to be developing whatever you're designing. And it's good to keep them. And one thing I learned the hard way that they expect you to take the leadership in that. You know what I mean? So you're not just being a designer, you being a manager too. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
you being the communicator. So communicate with them. Like, don't be the designer who just designs something, hand off the dev, and like, yeah, you figure it out. Like, no, I keep them all involved in the process. Like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. Am I going the right direction with this? What are your limitations for this? Whatever. So, yeah, open communication. This is your team. Learn them, learn about them, and sometimes it's good to be personal with them too. Like, oh, I know he has two dogs. Oh, I know how's the kids doing. Like, it's cool because you're building together. So don't. So they call it company culture. You know what I mean? But yeah, just
Cool.
communicate, take leadership.
Okay, great. So we have about 10 minutes left before we need to just to end, and we have several more questions in the queue. So maybe we could just switch and try to do a little bit of a rapid fire. and try to
Okay.
quickly kind of answer these questions. And thank you again for everyone who has submitted questions so far. This has been very stimulating. Okay, Devin, do the statistics you collect personally compare to what standard UX statistics suggest on a day-to-day experience?
I don't fully understand.
Hmm. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll circle back to that. I also don't understand what that is right off the bat either. Jennifer asks, how can you best present your design process and how you think in your portfolio?
Mm. Always define the problem you're solving. So I had the problem, show your thought process of finding a solution, good or bad within that process. Even good design, bad design, show it. You show them how you think. They want to know how you think, and then you show your solution. You keep those bare minimum in mind, you should have a decent case study.
Great. Okay, we have some anonymous entries here too. And one question that came up that I can answer, is it possible to get a recording of this or a copy of the slideshow? The answer to the question to that is yes, on both. UXPA International has a YouTube channel, and you can just find it by searching for UXPA International when you're on the YouTube website. And you will find a copy of this presentation there, probably in the next few days. Certainly, I expect in the next week. In terms of a copy of the slide deck, that's something that we can also make available on the website and or on the YouTube page. I'm not quite sure on the logistics of that, but we can definitely make that happen in some shape or form. Another anonymous attendee asks if there are any boot camps that you recommend. And similarly to that, well, why don't you just answer that? Are there any particular boot camps that you recommend very quickly?
No, no. Like, and I pay good money for mine. It's like, I would suggest that there are a ton of free resources online. But if you do need structure, I think the most affordable way, and probably like a Google course, online course. The only problem I have with Google is that the case studies are peer reviewed. So my thing is, if you do decide to go through Google, find an experienced designer to help go through your case study to make sure it's correct. Because asking your peers, that's not going to help. But you need, I think that's the best way to go.
Okay, so let me just clarify. So, am I interpreting that to mean that you recommend against boot camps?
Yeah, because like especially when I went to, it was very pricey, and I can't. It changed my life, yes, but I did a lot so much on the side of that too that I kind of learned on my own as well. I mean, and boot camps they only give you like a high level understanding as well. So to
Okay,
pay so much money, then they give you a lot of in depth stuff to me.
okay. This same person wants to know your thoughts on working on a master's degree in they say human design. I
Mm,
presume they mean like human-centered design.
mhm. I do know some designers that have done that and are pursuing that, and that works for them. Go for it definitely. Me personally, I'm probably the only designer on my team with just a high school diploma. To be honest with you, I've always been a self-starter. Teaching myself before YouTube. I was in Barnes and Noble all day reading books. You know, yeah. So I feel like yeah, if it's something you really have interest in, go for it. I think I can speak against it, but yeah. But not. But I will say I don't think it's really necessary either because I'm in it. You know what I mean? And life experience got me here. So it depends on your route. What's best for you.
Great. Let's see. Karen asks, would you say that freelancing in the doing user experience work, if that can be a good full-time career choice?
Currently for me, no. I like a little stability. Like I say, I know the job market is still kind of crazy, but knowing that I'm going to get paid every 2 weeks is a lot help me sleep easier at night than the freelance where you don't know where your next check is coming from. So and this coming from a long-term business owner. Like I said, I'll do photography stuff for years. Some checks are good, some are bad. You know what I mean? So if you're young and don't have any responsibilities or children, it may be easier to wing it. But for me being head of my household, I can't really play like that anymore. So I try to balance the two.
Yeah. I think you're also pointing out that many of these decisions or paths that you take are personalized. They really depend on many different factors that are maybe unique to you. I don't know if you agree with that,
Absolutely.
Christopher.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay. Okay. Um, let's see. Jordanos once it says that they are a nurse transitioning to tech. Um, what do you think is the what do you think is a relatively easy path to get your feet in the door for a UX role?
Hmm. I'm assuming as a nurse, you are well with people, like you really understand people, you empathize with people. So I say lean into that and find anything that's your strong point. So find anything that leans into that strong point of yours. And like I say, don't feel limited and don't feel limited to a startup. It could be a small business. Every business has a problem. So you may have a small business that work with people. They may have a problem they need to be solved, and you may be the person for that. So think broadly.
What was that last thing?
Yeah, think broadly. Like
Oh,
don't limit
broadly,
yourself.
right? Yeah,
Yeah. And
yes, right.
but I wouldn't say it's any easy process. Like I said, breaking the tech was the hardest thing I've probably ever done. So
Yeah,
I'm just being honest with you.
yeah. And to piggyback on that, I would also say if one of the things that your strength in nursing is interacting with people, that is a big part of UX. That is a specialty of like doing research, both an early research at the beginning of a project, as well as like how is the proposed solution or the actual release solution doing. So
Totally agree.
yeah, great. Um, let's see, Lori says, what year did you find your job and how has the market changed since then?
I broke in tech in 1 year, so 2021. Um, and what's the second part of that question?
They wanted to know how the market has changed
Oh,
since then.
yeah. So from my understanding from talking to recruiters, it's kind of like we're in the middle of a market correction where we have a lot more designers and jobs. But that's not to discourage you. I'm a firm believer that whatever is for you is for you, regardless of the circumstances. So right now, from what I'm seeing, it's a lot of senior openings and not a lot of junior openings, which make it hard for new designers. But that's why you should like say work with startups and get that experience up so you can land one of those other roles. But yeah, that's what I'm seeing. So it's like it's a hard market right now, and not just in tech. I think it's just in this country, period. The economic times we're living in, it's a rough job market right now. So I'll just be honest with you.
Yeah, it is. It's a challenging, unusual time right now. So we're sort of living in that. Okay, well that we have to leave it there for the questions. I'm going to post something quickly into the chat that includes some other information. I'll just quickly mention these things here right now, and that is to mention to people that the UXBA International holds an annual conference every summer. This year it will be held in Amsterdam, Netherlands in June. And then next year in 2026, it will take place in Las Vegas, Nevada, also in the US. For more information, you can visit the website. Um, if you have an idea for a UX webinar or workshop to be put on like this one was today, you can submit a proposal and you will find that also on the website. You can use the link there in the chat to submit your ideas. And you want to contact the UXBA about something else, send us a message via the website. It's uxba.org/contact-UXPA. And so finally, Christopher, I do see a slide up there that shows information about how people can get in touch with you. But maybe for those of us who are not kind of viewing the slides, could you just quickly mention how people can learn more about you or get in touch, such as
Yeah,
web addresses, etc.?
yeah, definitely. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just look up Chris UX. I should pop up in Atlanta. You have any questions? Just let me know. I'll probably be holding a networking event probably soon if there's a lot of people with questions where you ask more questions, so that's fine. I'm hosting the next workshop on March 6th. You can register for free on my website, inspire-ux.com, and that's where we're going to redesign the travel experience. So I think that would be a fun thing to do. So check it out.
Wow. Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much, Christopher. This has been fantastic.
Thank you.
And thank you for all the attendees. I hope you found this informative. Please, again, use those contact links to share your feedback and experiences about this event and to share ideas about other events. And with that, this is the close of the of today's webinar.